pakiusap ko doon sa mga nagbabatikos, bigyan mo naman ako ninyo ng 1 year, 6 months to 1 year. If I cannot deliver during that 1 year period, then I will step down, I promise. I will really deliver yung sinasabi ko ngayon na quick response. As a matter of fact, magtatayo ako ng QRT quick response team sa mga sunog, sa mga bagyo, delubyo, nandoon ng DSWD na maaasahan mo. I will do that.
Ito, Social Welfare Secretary nominee Erwin Tulfo. Tulfo asked critics to give him 6 months to a year to prove himself worthy of the DSWD post. Tulfo promised to step down from the cabinet should he fail to deliver. The broadcaster promises a quicker delivery of services during typhoons and other disasters, and he vows to be an on-the-ground secretary. Time for the day's biggest headlines. I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Tough task ahead for Tulfo as he plans to make ayuda distribution digital. Other Marcos Jr. cabinet appointees have also bared their agendas as they near the start of their service. Marlene Alcaide has the big story.
Clean and digitize the list of ayuda beneficiaries. That's the first order of President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to incoming Social Welfare Secretary Erwin Tulfo. He also wants those badly hit by the pandemic to be well provided for. But Tulfo's appointment has been met with criticism. To this, Tulfo says give him up to 1 year to prove his worth.
Bigyan naman ho ako ng 6 months to 1 year. Pag hindi po ako nakadeliver, ako na mismo ang bababa sa pwesto.
Tulfo is among the 5 nominees who have recently accepted the offer to be in Marcos Jr.'s cabinet. Liloan Mayor Cristina Garcia Frasco has taken on the task to become the next tourism chief. In a statement, Frasco said that she supports Marcos Jr.'s vision to revitalize tourism for the country's post-pandemic economic growth. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Assistant Governor Amina Pangandaman has likewise accepted the offer to be the next budget secretary. She said that it is an honor to serve the country. Pangandaman also told News 5 that Marcos Jr. is expected to meet his entire economic team soon. Incoming DICT Chief IT Law Expert Ivan John Enrile Uy said he will focus on digital infrastructure as promised by the President-elect. Some posts, on the other hand, remain vacant, just like the Defense Department. But outgoing Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello floated the name of retired General Hermogenes Esperon for the post.
Si Secretary John Esperon, nababalita ko magiging Secretary of National Defense. Balita lang naman eh.
Aside from completing his cabinet, Marcos Jr.'s camp is also preparing for his inauguration on June 30. His sister, Senator Amy Marcos, says that they have yet to pick a venue. Options include the Carino Grandstand and the Fort Santiago. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
Incoming President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is set to face new challenges at the start of his term as he inherits elevated inflation, mounting debt, and twin deficits. What are Marcos Jr.'s marching orders to the economic team? We asked Finance Secretary nominee and Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Benjamin Diokno. Good evening, Governor Diokno. Welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Robbie.
Sir, let's pick up on that directly. What are the marching orders from incoming President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.?
I think ang pinaka-importante, kailangan yung ekonomiya natin ay patuloy na lumago kasi a growing economy solves many problems. No? Pag lumalago yung ekonomiya mo, tumataas din yung business activity, tumataas din yung taxation, nasusolve yung deficit problem mo, nasusolve yung debt problem mo, na babawasan ang mga mahihirap at dumadami ang trabaho. So really, the focus should be on growing the economy on a sustainable basis.
Okay, is it possible to have a 1-minute answer to the question of how do we do that?
Well, alam mo, maganda naman yung ekonomiya natin before the pandemic. Lumalago siya ng 6 to 7% at naka-recover na tayo. And in addition, marami tayong ginawang reforma nung panahon ni Presidente Duterte. In fact, yung tatlong batas recently na pinasa niya. Napakaganda nun yung amendment to the Retail Trade Act, amendment to the Foreign Investments Act, at saka yung pinaka-importante dun yung Public Services Act na we are welcoming foreign investors 100% in some areas like telco, tollways, water, and other areas. So maganda yun. At in addition, binago namin yung tax system natin. Our taxes that we will turn over to the next government will be much different, much improved compared to what we got from President Aquino at that time.
But different and improved, what does that mean? Diretsuhin ko na po, tanong ng mga tao, nanggagaling tayo sa isang krisis, kailangan ng pera, mahirap nang mangutang pa, maiiwasan po ba ang mas mataas o bagong buwis?
Maiiwasan yun, as I said, kasi because the tax system is superior, pwede tayong mag-focus sa implementation, no? And doon naman sa implementation, we will apply yung modern methods. Digitalization is key in enhancing the administration of taxes.
To that point po, it has also been floated and a lot of people are talking about it, taxing goods and services online. What is the thinking there?
Tama lang yun kasi ang pinaka-importanting prinsipyo sa pagbubuwis ay yung fairness. Kasi kung bumili ka sa ordinary store ay natatax, the same commodity na bibilin mo online should also be taxed accordingly. Ang tawag doon, fairness. So mas maganda yon kung at the moment nakakalusot sila sa taxation dahil nga bagong sistema, I think we should try to cover them in like manner na nagbabayad din ng buwis kung ginagamit mo yung ordinary transactions.
Okay, Governor Jokno, maraming salamat po. Governor Jokno is the incoming Finance Secretary as well. And these are the other big stories tonight. The Philippines has summoned a senior official of the Chinese embassy. This after the Chinese Coast Guard reportedly harassed a group of Filipino scientists in the West Philippine Sea. Meanwhile, the country has logged 5 more cases of the highly transmissible COVID Omicron subvariant. This brings the total number of cases to 22. And outgoing President Rodrigo Duterte signing off with a song. The video of Duterte singing in a Thanksgiving dinner after the break. watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Counting down the days until he leaves Malacanang, President Rodrigo Duterte presided over his cabinet's first full meeting since the pandemic. At the same time, he hosted a Thanksgiving dinner. A look at how that went in Maricel Halili's report.
With his term set to end in less than a month, President Rodrigo Duterte hosted a despedida party for his cabinet members, thanking them for their 6 years of service.
Mo mentioned yung desire niya to thank also the spouses for being not selfish na pinabigay yung oras para pagsilbi sa ating gobyerno.
Cabinet officials, meanwhile, continue to give their accomplishment report in Day 2 of the Duterte Legacy Summit. Aside from the COVID response, the Health Department emphasized the implementation of the Universal Healthcare Law and the maximum retail price regulations for medicines. The salaries of some medical practitioners, however, remains to be an issue. Even Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello expressed his disappointment. His advice to nurses: assert their rights.
You demand for your rightful claim as workers. If they do not give you your minimum wage as provided under the law, go on strike. Tingnan mo kung maka-operate dyan ang mga private hospitals. Tingnan mo kung maka-operate ang Medical City, ang Makati Med, ang St. Luke Hospital, kung wala ang mga healthcare workers.
As for the Education, Commission on Higher Education Chair Prospero de Vera said there was a 300% increase in the number of local universities included in the list of top universities worldwide. There was also an increase in the number of students going to college.
For every 100 students who enter grade 1, historically, only 50 finish senior high. And out of the 50, about 25 try to go to higher ed.
The Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, meanwhile, reported that a total of 88.83 billion pesos worth of illegal drugs were seized. This was one of the key promises of Duterte during his campaign in 2016. While there is no clear schedule yet on the meeting between President Duterte and President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea said that he has already met with the Marcos camp to talk about their plans for the inauguration on June 30. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
Meanwhile, security arrangements are now being planned in preparation for Vice President-elect Sara Duterte's inauguration in Davao. Davao police are studying security measures for the event after several bombing incidents in Davao. Contrary to the June 30 inauguration stipulated in the Constitution, the President's daughter wants an earlier inauguration on June 19. Meanwhile, in a Facebook post, Marcos Jr. wished his running mate Sara Duterte Carpio a happy birthday, calling her his best friend forever. Duterte thanked those who sent greetings her way. Incoming President Marcos Jr. has said that his campaign promise to bring down the price of rice to 20 pesos a kilo is but an aspiration. But for one farmer, that might just be too much of an aspiration and perhaps a nightmare for the sector. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro explains.
Renan Bautista owns an 11-hectare farm in Nueva Ecija. Barely able to make a living as a rice farmer because of the cost of production, Renan minces no words about the promises of incoming President Bongbong Marcos to cut rice prices by 20 pesos a kilo.
Napaka-unrealistic niya. Paano mangyayari yun? So sabi ko, dapat lahat bumaba. So paano bababa? If our economy is really down there, diba?
To make that possible, Renan says, the cost of farms' inputs needs to be cut by up to a fourth of their current prices. To farm each hectare, Renan lists down the costs for farmers: 1,200 for seeds, 3,000 for gas, 2,900 for fertilizers, and 700 for pesticides.
More or less, lahat ng gagastusin mo sa isang ektarya is nasa 35,000 to 40,000. Dapat babaan lahat nila from the crudo, from the pataba. Yung tipong crudo mo is nasa 10 pesos per liter na lang. Pataba mo nasa 500 pesos per bag or yung tipong gamot mo is nasa tigo 100 pesos per bottle.
Last summer, the Nan was able to sell his rice at 15.50 per kilo. That's 2 pesos and 50 centavos below the farm gate average price in Central Luzon of 18 pesos, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority. Already, that's 4 pesos and 50 centavos below the Marcos's target, and that's just at the farm gate. The price doubles from the farm gate to the market, as middlemen and traders add their costs. But Rosendo So, chairman of the Samahan ng Industriyang Agrikultura, is more optimistic, saying if middlemen and retailers are willing to settle for smaller profits, Marcos's target might just be achievable.
Kung maipaba natin yung presyo nila sa retail ng 2 pesos ang kita lang nila. Kung papayag ma-outlet, yun, pwede bumaba yung presyo ng bigas nila.
But Bautista, who is at the start of the chain, points out that people have to have a reasonable return.
Hindi naman pwede magsakripisyo ang magsasaka kasi wala silang kakainin. Hindi naman kami pwede magsakripisyo dahil kami yung gumagastos.
Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
For the big story in sports, fresh off his gold medal finish in the 31st Southeast Asian Games, Filipino pole vaulter EJ Obiena reigned supreme at the European City of Sports event in L'Aquila, Italy. Obiena cleared the 5.85-meter mark in his title-winning jump, sharing the accomplishment on his official Facebook page. The 26-year-old is coming off a 5.46-meter finish at the recently concluded Southeast Asian Games in Hanoi, Vietnam. Obiena is expected to continue his dominance in more international events in preparation for other major sporting events in the coming years. We'll take another quick break. More of the big stories when we return. Watching the big story, I'm Robbie Alampay. The Department of Foreign Affairs is set to file yet another diplomatic protest against China over its continued harassment of Philippine vessels in the West Philippine Sea. Marian Enriquez with this report.
Since March, the Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative has recorded a total of 3 incidents of intrusion and harassment by Chinese vessels in the West Philippine Sea's exclusive economic zone. First was on March 23 when Chinese Coast Guard shadowed research vessel Legend, which had Filipino and Taiwanese scientists on board. That went on until April 9. They also followed seismic ships contracted by the Philippines. A separate incident happened on April 21 when BFAR and PCG's vessels heading to Ayungin Shoal were pursued by Chinese Coast Guard vessels. The Foreign Affairs Department has summoned a senior official of the Chinese embassy to protest the harassment.
I think the message is clear that China will not allow the Philippines to conduct its own petroleum exploration in its exclusive economic zone and continental shelf area. This will also discourage investors in the petroleum industry in the Philippines.
The DFA adds that some of these incidents violate innocent passage and the maritime jurisdiction. With the incoming new administration, experts stress the importance of having a foreign policy that will assert Philippine sovereign rights over China's intrusion in the West Philippine Sea. Meanwhile, for De La Salle University International Studies Professor Renato De Castro, it is also important to strengthen ties with allies and to assert the arbitral ruling.
We could not simply do away with our alliance. Then, of course, maintaining our security partnerships, especially with Japan, Australia, and South Korea. Then, of course, the importance of acknowledging the arbitral ruling.
Meanwhile, Philippine Ambassador to the U.S. Jose Manuel Romualdez notes the importance of a balanced approach.
We definitely would like to have very good relations with our neighbor China, at the same time continuing our relationship with the United States.
The DFA has also filed a diplomatic protest against China's unilateral imposition of a 3.5 fishing moratorium in the South China Sea that will last until August 16. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
5 more cases of the highly transmissible COVID Omicron subvariant have been recorded by the Department of Health. That brings the total number of those cases to 22. The 5 cases come from Western Visayas. 3 returning OFWs from the United States and 2 locals tested positive for BA.2.12.1 Omicron subvariant. All 5 cases have recovered after showing no symptoms and completing self-isolation. 7 close contacts were identified by the DOH. In world news, Filipinos working in crisis-hit Sri Lanka are set to receive $300 in financial aid from the Department of Foreign Affairs. DFA Undersecretary Sara Ariola says Filipinos in Sri Lanka are starting to feel the effects of the economic crisis as prices have gone up by 45%. So far, 25 of the more than 400 Filipinos in Sri Lanka have signed up for repatriation assistance. Other agencies, such as the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration and the Department of Social Welfare and Development, have been tapped to assist the Filipino nationals when they arrive home.
Nakalaan po yung pondong yon, so na $300 and OWA rin po, ready rin po silang tumulong. At doon po naman sa mga uuwi sa Pilipinas, magbibigay din po ng tulong ang DFA ang OWA at hihingi rin po kami ng tulong sa DSWD.
Outgoing President Rodrigo Duterte serenaded the crowd with what could well be his swan song during a Thanksgiving dinner with cabinet officials. CHED Commissioner Popoy de Vera shared the video of Duterte belting out the last lines of Sharon Cuneta's Ikaw with the Philharmonic Orchestra. De Vera said other cabinet members sang in the event during this light moment. The 77-year-old president steps down from office on June 30. Ang lahat ng aking And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow, 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, you can visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on, wash hands, and get vaccinated, Philippines. Sa ngalan po ni Gretchen Ho, ako po si Robbie Alampay. We are One News.